Tonight, former mayor says there is a serious problem in Canadian politics. Nenshi says criticism of Canada's anti-Islamophobia representative lacks supportive political response. He says El Gawabi has been browbeaten and lectured to. And an arson attack in a German town. 2 intruders set ablaze clothing items collected for earthquake victims. The owner of the supermarket says his dream of donating to Turkey and Syria shattered.
There's nothing that can prepare you from what I'm witnessing here. The sheer amount of desperation and grief that you feel in people's faces is real.
Turkey's devastating earthquake has claimed more than 35,000 lives. A Canadian relief worker in Urfa, Turkey, explains the impact. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I am Catherine Bullock. Nenshi, former Calgary mayor, is calling for support for Canada's first anti-Islamophobia representative, Amira El Gawabi. In yesterday's Senate Committee on Human Rights, Nenshi raised concerns about Islamophobia in the country. He said he was, quote, extraordinarily vexed about the lack of political response to the controversies surrounding El Gawabi's appointment. She has been heavily criticized by Quebec leaders as they accuse her of holding anti-Quebec views. El Gawabi wrote an opinion piece on Quebec's Bill 21 that bars Muslim women from wearing headscarves while holding a public position. Nenshi, who has been critical of the bill, says El Gawabi has been browbeaten and lectured to, which represents a serious problem in the country. A media source is reporting that the Canadian Security Intelligence Service had allegedly warned Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and senior aides to monitor their political dealings with former Liberal Cabinet Minister Michael Chang. According to the sources, Chang had close ties with the Chinese consulate in Toronto. Currently, Chang is the deputy mayor of the city of Markham. He has refuted the revelations made by the security intelligence sources, calling them character assassination. The news comes at a time when tensions between Toronto and Beijing are high on a number of fronts, including security breaches and violation of airspace. Donations in the form of clothing items collected for Turkish and Syrian earthquake victims in Recklinghausen, Germany, have been set ablaze in a case of arson attack. Video footage shows 2 arsonists of European descent breaking into a shopping centre where the donations were stored. 2 Turkish flags were also burnt. The owner of the supermarket says that his dream of donating clothes and funds to the victims have been shattered. He says he will not be accepting any donations now and will only pass cash to the victims. Germany is home to 2.9 million Turks and 924,000 Syrians. The city of Steinbach in Manitoba recently held its first public Muslim prayer services that saw Muslims in the southern part of the province get together. The first Friday prayers on February 3 welcomed 35 Muslims. It was led by Idris El Bakri, a former member of the Manitoba Islamic Association board. The following Friday congregation saw 30. The initiative was taken by a 28-year-old Syrian refugee. He says there was discussion among the locals about a need for a mosque. Steinbach is about 60 kilometers southeast of Winnipeg, where the closest mosques are. COVID had postponed the beginnings of public prayer in 2020. The sight of rescue workers pulling children out of collapsed buildings in the earthquake zone are bringing tears to our eyes. As Turkey and Syria cope with the massive devastation and loss of life after the recent earthquakes, international aid agencies have sprung into action. We talked to Eduardo Alves dos Anjos from the IDRF, or International Development and Relief Foundation, the Eastern Canada Regional Manager. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me, Sister Kat.
Thank you for joining us. You are in Turkey right now, I believe?
That's correct.
So can you just tell us, what it's like? You flew in and then you traveled, I guess, by bus to the region or something. Just describe it for us.
So I got a phone call from my director about 7 days ago at 8 a.m. in the morning, and he told me we're sending you to Turkey to help out our implementing partners here. And I flew on a first flight, and I came here to provide relief work to our brothers and sisters who are suffering. If I can describe it to you, Kathy, in just a few words, I would say that it feels like Yom al Qiyamah.
Mm.
Everywhere you look, you see destruction, despair, chaos, grief, trauma. It's beyond description, and it's almost surreal what's happening here. You're not sure if you're in a movie or if you're in a bad dream and you're going to wake up, but it's heavy.
You said Yom Qiyam, but just to translate that for people who might not know, that's the
Yeah.
Arabic for Day of Judgment.
The Day of Judgment, that's correct, because there's a
Mm.
lot of references in the Quran of the Day of Judgment being a day of where a mother will push her own child away from her and say, Nafsi, Nafsi, myself, myself, I cannot help you, help yourself. I've seen family trying to evacuate, the city of Hatay, and their children barely being able to keep up with their parents, fights breaking off because the tension is really palpable. The army is basically on the ground right now because the president has declared the state of emergency, helicopters flying left and right, the sirens of the ambulance, the infrastructure being destroyed, people literally dead on the streets, and children dying of hypothermia because of the cold. A lot of people don't know this, but it's currently sub-zero temperature right here in some areas of the affected region.
Mm.
And it's quite a scene.
Well, it's no wonder you're saying that it's heavy. I've seen some earthquake experts saying it's like 32 bombs for Hiroshima, or enough power to power New York City for 4 days. So that's a way of understanding its magnitude, but the way you describe it, it kind of hits home more. Is this your first time in being involved in that kind of relief effort?
I've done relief work in the past, but nothing to the scale of what I'm seeing right now. And honestly, I knew that it was going to be bad, but I don't think there's anything that can prepare you for what you see on the ground here, even if you have experience. I mean, I had colleagues working alongside with me who have already responded more than 10 times, and they were in tears after what they've seen, and they were in shock. Some of them were shaking because it's one thing to intellectualize it when you look at it on your phone and you see the news feed, but it's another thing to be here and to feel it viscerally.
Yes, I can imagine that. I know that the Muslim world the non-Muslim world as well, everyone is galvanized, collecting goods and sending. And I was wondering if you could just talk about what you think people need the most in terms of what we who aren't there can do.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. Look, it's quite simple. People right now need everything in terms of their physiological needs. They need everything. There's no more infrastructure in this country right now. But most importantly, one of the key things here is psychosocial support. The trauma is real. I've tried to approach some of the victims and survivors in order to get, their stories out for the world to hear and to galvanize more aid. No one would talk to me. No one would talk to me. They were in such a state of grief that they understood the benefit of doing it, but they were incapable of, because the grief is just so real. I mean, put it like this: you're in your deep REM sleep, okay, and all of a sudden your building collapse, and you hear people screaming, and you are under the rubble. I mean, it's surreal.
It is surreal. It's not the kind of thing you can't even really imagine that, as exactly as you said. But I wonder, I was at a mosque yesterday and they'd done a drive. This is in Toronto, North Mississauga, Greater Toronto area. And they had masses of, I think it's all new, like blankets and tents and clothes. And the Jordanian airline was flying it over for free. And I believe the Turkish Airlines is doing the same thing. And I wondered if goods, or is it better for people just to donate cash and let the aid agency decide what to get?
Yeah. Well, the answer is yes, because organization like IDRF, International Development and Relief Foundation, which I represent and work for, have already a presence on the ground right now with its partner, and we're delivering psychosocial support, blankets, food, first aid kits, winter kits, in order to cater to people's physiological needs. But some of the people whom we've spoken to said that their first priority right now is to find the bodies of their family to give them a proper burial. We've met some families that were just sitting in front of the rubbles for days, just waiting for their bodies of the families to come out. They wouldn't eat. They wouldn't move. They were like statues, just waiting. And it goes a long way to draw the picture as to what is the emotional state of people, right?
So you mentioned you're doing psychosocial, or you're hoping to, or trying to, but I feel that I can see, even with yourself, I can see like stress and distress on your face from like what you're witnessing. How do relief workers, like, do you have a self-care training as well that you have to do for yourself in order to go and help others?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that when you're on the ground and you are trying to help, you're pouring as much as you can, right, into other people's cup. But in order for you to fill other people's cup, your cup has to be full, right? And one of the things that I have constantly been doing is just to remind myself that I get to go back to Canada. I get to go back to my wife and to my children. And that in of itself is one of the most devastatingly and at the same time happy thought that I can have, because I'm coming from a place of privilege. And that privilege in of itself is my self-care right now. It's my happy thought. It's literally what I'm holding on to in order to feel that, thank God I wasn't tested like that. So don't complain too much and just try to be what the situation requires of you, and you'll deal with it after. That's been my approach to it so far.
And I've seen Muslim religious leaders reminding people that when something good happens to you, you thank God for it. And when something bad happens to you, you're patient, and then you get the reward for that. So they're trying to encourage people not to fall into a sense of despair, the people who are there going through it, as well as the people like us on the outside watching. And they're saying, watch the news, but don't watch it too much. Just when you watch the news, do something good, which is to make a donation or to make dua for the people. So I think they're trying really hard to make sure this event doesn't become like an event of despair, because all is in the hands of God and everything is supposed to be good, even if it looks devastating at the time.
Absolutely. And I do appreciate that reminder, because it can't be repeated enough. God is in command, and nothing happens in this dunya without his permission. So we just have to be acceptant and have patience and do whatever we can to be what the situation requires.
We've seen some miracle stories. The story out of Syria where a baby, they found the umbilical cord, that they found that the woman had given birth, but the baby was still attached and still alive, and they were able to save. I think stories like that can also give hope. Have you been part of any kind of memorable moment that has really touched your heart deeply that you want to share?
Well, I've just been really uplifted by little small acts of goodness that I've witnessed, especially from my team. I've seen some of members of my team giving some of their own food to children erring around without parents, right? I've seen so many different countries answering the call and coming here. Countries that I would have never even thought would have had the kind of reflex or the intuition to come here. I mean, we're talking about countries in Latin America, where I'm from. I'm originally from Brazil, and I heard like Mexico and even Peru was here. And these things are really beautiful to see, because it really shows that people care, and that Turkey is in the hearts and minds of everyone around the world.
And we have to end it there, I'm afraid, but we do wish you well with your work, to have that, so that you have the strength to help others, and we're behind and supporting you all the way. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, please share, like, and subscribe. Stay safe, and God bless.